Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily for Tuesday, February 18th. I hope you all enjoyed your long weekends if you had them. I know we did. Minna, how was your long weekend?
It was a well-needed rest, although there was a lot of news that happened over the weekend. So it wasn't a total rest. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Had a good Valentine's Day, good weekend. Saw a lot of movies. Met my girlfriend's parents, turned them into listeners of the DSR Daily. So, Jay and Andrea, if you're listening, welcome. Thank you for
We're
listening.
happy to have you.
I appreciate your support. But yeah, it was a good weekend.
I'm glad to hear that. All right, well, I guess let's just jump right into the news.
Oh boy.
All right, our first story. Michelle King resigned as acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration after refusing to grant the Department of Government Efficiency access to sensitive Social Security recipient data. The White House replaced her with Leland Dudek as acting commissioner while nominating Frank Bisignano to lead the Social Security Administration. King's departure highlights concerns about potential unlawful access to private taxpayer information, while experts warn that it could jeopardize the security of American Social Security and Medicare records. I think one of the dumbest things that you can do, and don't get me wrong, there is a lot of dumb stuff happening, but I think something that really, really upsets voters is to go after their Social Security. And I don't think that people are so happy knowing that the Social Security Administration, that whole department, is being tampered with.
Yeah. I mean,
people like their Social Security.
I think I see this as being potentially the thing that gets Elon shit canned from the administration and thrown under the bus. My theory has always been that at some point they're going to have a falling out because two people with that big of egos cannot coexist and share power. But my backup theory is if that doesn't happen, once we start seeing the effects of these government cuts, Elon is going to get chucked under the bus. And I think messing with Social Security is fast tracking that for sure. If something goes wrong with Social Security, Elon is screwed. Because Trump's not going to take responsibility and Elon's going to get blamed. Rightfully so. I mean, like, they should obviously both be blamed. But, yeah, this is a terrible idea politically.
Yeah. Well, I also think that, like, at this point, the only people who can really do real things to stop Trump and Elon Musk and all of these things that are going on in the federal government are Republicans in Congress. And so I do think that going after Social Security seems like something that other Republicans might push against, whereas some of these other changes, like changes to DEI and things like that, are a little easier for them to blow off.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's political suicide to go after Social Security. Like, if they tamper with Social Security, they're going to get blown out in the midterms. Unless they literally plan to, like, get rid of democracy, which I guess maybe that's the plan. And that's what they want.
Yeah.
But, like, that's the only way where tampering with Social Security isn't suicide, because then it wouldn't matter. But if you plan on having a vote in 2 years, then this is a bad idea. And like you say, I would hope the self-interested Republicans in Congress will realize, holy shit, this is not going to go well for us if we do this. But who knows? It's hard to say. Well, in other news, top U.S. and Russian diplomats met in Saudi Arabia to discuss improving relations and negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine, marking a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy under President Trump. No Ukrainian officials were present, sparking concerns from Kyiv and European allies about being sidelined. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov agreed to restore embassy staffing, create a high-level team for peace talks, and explore economic cooperation. While progress was limited, the meeting set the stage for a potential Trump-Putin summit. Saudi Arabia played a key diplomatic role, highlighting its growing influence. Not good that this was happening without Ukraine or Europe at the table. Peace talks needed to include both the representation from both those parties. So the fact that they are just soldiering on without either, it's pretty troubling. I think they made comments saying this is just to set up talks and that Ukraine will be at the real talks, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't see this being a positive end for Ukraine, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Just every indication so far suggests that they're going to be thrown to the wolves by this administration.
Yeah, and I think it's just setting up further our new allyship with Russia, aligning ourselves further with them and moving away from previous allies.
Yeah, Rubio really highlighted, he's like, oh, there's a lot of potential for partnership with Russia. And I think my takeaway reading this article was that I think the Trump administration just thinks peace in and of itself is good. And there's such things as bad peace. And throwing Ukraine away to partner with a murderous regime in Russia, I don't know, call me crazy. I don't think that's necessarily good. I don't think sacrificing our values and essentially creating a world order where the strong countries can just devour the weak without consequence in the sake of quote unquote peace, I don't think that's particularly desirable. But, it seems that the Trump administration does. I don't think it's any secret why, based on their rhetoric around Panama and other places where we apparently have a newfound vested interest in retaking old territory. So I think it's that Trump sees what Putin has done and wants that for himself, but it wants to be more successful. Maybe that's going too far, but I I think if Greenland and Panama are any indication, I think Trump would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a foreign policy pattern. It's
certainly something in his mind, even if he knows it's a bad idea politically, because part of the reason, I don't know if this is part of the reason he won or so much of just a talking point by MAGA is that no new wars were started under Trump, which, citation needed for all his military actions and extrajudicial killings. But that being said, that is taken away as soon as you invade Panama or retake Greenland by military force. And we haven't really heard as much about either of those lately. It was probably, maybe it was just bluster. I know he got some concessions, but I think that's a big reason why he's trying to just get this conflict over. Part of it was that it was a campaign promise, which has already been missed because he promised to have it done day one, and obviously way past that. But not good. I'm sure Ukrainians are extremely nervous, and I think, unfortunately, rightfully so.
Yeah. Well, sticking with overseas news, Iran rejected U.S. and Israeli threats as a violation of international law, stating that they cannot harm the country. This came after Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and U.S. Secretary of State Rubio reaffirmed their commitment to thwarting Iran's nuclear ambitions. Despite Iran's defiant stance, its influence in the region has weakened due to setbacks faced by its allies in the axis of resistance, particularly during the Gaza war and the fall of Assad in Syria. I read also that Saudi Arabia is trying to mediate a nuclear deal, but does not really seem like either side is that interested in creating any kind of nuclear deal here.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm sure Saudi Arabia and Israel are particularly excited about this administration because they will certainly take a more hardline stance against Iran, potentially military action. But again, per our last conversation, not necessarily something that would be ideal politically, I think. I don't think Americans are particularly interested in getting involved in another quagmire anywhere, let alone in the Middle East, which has an even worse connotation in terms of as far as American quagmires go. But I don't know. We'll see. Again, the influence of Iran has really taken a hit in recent months and years. Their kind of strategy is failing. Could that mean more direct action against Iran itself? I sure hope not, but we'll see. The dismissal of thousands of federal health workers, including 1,200 employees at the National Institute of Health and key personnel at the CDC and FDA, has sparked widespread concern about the future of public health in the U.S. The cuts, part of President Trump's plan to shrink the federal workforce, have eliminated critical training programs and affected scientists, doctors, and administrators working on major health initiatives. While the Epidemic Intelligence Service was spared following public outcry, other programs fostering future health leaders were gutted. Experts warn that these firings leave the country vulnerable to future health crises, with concerns heightened by the recent detection of a lethal bird flu strain in the U.S. Yeah, we're fucked if there is a big pandemic in the next 4 years. There's no way to sugarcoat it. That's just what's going to happen. We have in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. someone who doesn't believe that tried and tested ways to combat pandemics work. I suspect there will be a woeful lack of vaccine research if there is a new pandemic, which means thousands and thousands more Americans would die in such a scenario, if not millions, depending on how long it would go on. And cutting out these workers that just kind of continue their work despite political, whatever's happening politically, means that we're even more at the mercy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the other morons in charge of these agencies that don't believe in public health. And again, I don't see that this is a good thing politically, because if there's a pandemic and hundreds of thousands of Americans die, that will not reflect well on the administration. It seems like he hasn't learned his lesson from last time. I think the agreement now is pretty much that Trump only really lost last time around because of the pandemic. Apparently he did not learn his lesson and went the opposite direction, where if there's another pandemic, that is going to absolutely devastate the Republicans politically.
Yeah, and it's also lessening the people who are able to work on the response to a pandemic. Like, I have a friend who is a surgical resident at the NIH, and he's under threat of losing his job, and other residents are under threat of losing their jobs. And I don't know why RFK Jr. would want, or Trump or anyone would want, less neurosurgeons or less cardiologists or less doctors who would be able to help people in case of something like this happened. Not only just in general, but if there was a pandemic, we need people to be able to help the people who get sick from it. And they're eliminating not only the people who do the research, but also the response team as well.
Yep. Agreed. That's all I have to say on that. It kind of just speaks for itself that it's bad. You don't need anybody to tell you why this is bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't pass the sniff test. It's clearly bad. The doctors that are responsible for combating deadly diseases are being fired. Yeah, that's bad. You don't need us to tell you that.
Yeah, we're coming out hard stance on this. Not good. Well, speaking of people thinking that these ideas are not good, on President's Day yesterday, protests erupted across the U.S. against President Trump's agenda and his advisor, Elon Musk, with slogans like "Not My President's Day" and "No King's Day." The 50-51 movement, with its grassroots organizing, led rallies in major cities expressing outrage over Trump's executive orders and Musk's growing influence, particularly through the Department of Government Efficiency. The protests also focused on concerns about government downsizing, federal worker layoffs, and the loss of diversity and inclusion efforts, highlighting a rising political tension in the country. Did you attend one of these protests or see them happening around DC?
I confess that I did not. So I don't have a lot to add on this one.
I didn't either, because it was my mom's birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Mom. And so I spent the day with her. But on my way from DC to where my parents live, I I saw so many people getting on the metro with signs, and there was like a line to get down to the metro so that people could go into the city and protest. And that made me really happy. And I'm sad that David's not here on this episode, because I know we talk a lot about like, why aren't people doing something? Why aren't people saying something? Like, people need to get angry. People need to react. People need to show that they're not okay with the way things are being handled. And it warmed my heart to see people getting angry and taking action and making sure that our president knew that this wasn't his President's Day.
Yeah, I mean, I think, people are doing what they can. And I think it's good that people are making their voices heard. I don't know how effective they'll be, because I don't think this administration, frankly, gives too much of a shit about public opinion at this point, clearly. But, I think any way that people are exercising their frustration like this is helpful. And if nothing else, it's cathartic to feel like we're doing something. But,
yeah,
I think protest is a great American tradition, but unfortunately, I think this administration, more than any other, is going to be even less receptive to protest. I think for all the reasons we talked about already, I think they just don't really give a shit about, which is sad, but it's better,
at least
better than
we
not
showed
doing anything. Yes.
Yeah, at least we showed we're not okay with it and we're not on board. So.
Yep. Well, I think that just about does it for our stories today. Man, any other parting thoughts? Any interesting movies you watched over the weekend?
Did you watch the SNL 50th anniversary?
I haven't yet, but now that I've been able to re-download TikTok,
yes, that also happened over the weekend.
I keep seeing clips from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I am excited to watch it. I'm not like I watch SNL clips. I've never actually just watched a full episode of SNL, but I am interested in watching it. I've heard good things.
Here's my hot take, and this goes for all of SNL, not just the 50th, but who wants to watch a full episode of SNL? Just watch the clips. Like, you just want to watch the funniest parts. That's kind of how I view SNL anyways. I think that it's better to just watch the highlight reel. And that's kind of how I felt about the 50th anniversary as well. It was really long. It was like 3 hours, right? So I think if you just watch the clips, you'll get the sense of it. You'll get the idea. And there were some super funny moments, don't get me wrong. And really emotional moments too. Like Adam Sandler sang a song about all of the people who had been on SNL and how long they worked there, and friends who have passed away. And I was watching it thinking, am I going to cry right now watching this 50th anniversary SNL special? But it was very moving in parts and funny in other parts, and much like any other episode of SNL, dragged in some parts too. So it was a good tribute.
Yeah. I'm
worth a watch.
I'm definitely going to watch it. So I will report back to you once I have with my
good
detailed thoughts. Well, that's all we have for you today, but we have more DSR Daily for the rest of the week. We have more episodes of DSR. So stay tuned right here on the DSR network. And until next time, bye-bye.